The laundry room smelled like softener sheets and scorched lint. June moved slowly, folding warm towels one by one with the kind of quiet precision that came from years of doing it alone. Her hands knew these corners better than her mind did. Corner to corner, smooth the edge, stack, repeat. A rhythmic motion, meditative almost. It was Sunday afternoon, but it could have been any day. The sun outside burned bright through the slatted window, turning the floating dust into gold. Then came the voice, too loud, too sharp for the space. I swear to God, she's like a free maid, only slower. Haley on speakerphone, laughing. June didn't turn around. Her hands froze for a second on the towel she was folding, but she didn't stop. She just adjusted the seam a little neater and kept going. Clink, ice in a tumbler. Someone giggled through the phone, a second voice, filtered and tinny. No, like seriously, Haley continued, not bothering to lower her voice. I don't even ask anymore. She just does stuff. I think she likes it. Some people need to feel useful. She walked right past June to the dryer, her voice trailing off into some new tangent. Parties, a guy named Tyler, someone's breakup. But June wasn't listening anymore. She folded the last towel like it was glass, placed it on the stack, straightened the edges again even though they didn't need straightening. Then she walked out. The evening came on fast. Long shadows slipped across the living room carpet as the sun dipped behind the pines. June sat on the back porch, wrapped in her cardigan, fingers still, eyes unfocused. Her lips moved sometimes, but no words came out. She didn't know what she'd expected. An apology, embarrassment, some hint of shame in Haley's voice when their eyes met. Number. Just that flippant, breezy laugh and the sound of glass tapping glass. The words stayed lodged in her throat. Maid, not housemate, not roommate, not friend. Maid, like she belonged to the walls and the washing machine. Hey! Shirley's voice cut through the twilight. She stepped out onto the porch with 2 mugs, handed one to June. The steam curled in the cool evening air. June managed a smile, but it didn't make it to her eyes. Shirley sat beside her. Older by a decade, maybe more, but sharp as a knife. She'd lived upstairs for 3 years and missed nothing. She sipped her tea, watching June from the corner of her eye. You look like you're done, she said quietly. June let the words settle. She knew Shirley wasn't talking about laundry. I think I am, June replied, her voice thin, paper dry. Shirley didn't press. She just nodded slowly and stared out at the darkening woods. Crickets were starting to hum. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and then went silent. She doesn't see you, Shirley said finally. Not really. She sees what you do, what you give. June's throat tightened. I used to think people like that were just careless, Shirley continued, but they're not. They know exactly what they're doing. They like the mirror polished, but they don't want to see themselves in it. The tea had gone cold in June's hands. She set the cup down gently. Inside, the house was glowing with laughter. Haley had friends over again. More noise, more clinking glasses, more effortless cruelty disguised as charm. And June stood at the threshold, invisible, but not deaf, not anymore. She turned away from the porch light and stepped back into the shadows, silent, calm, precise. She didn't say another word that night, but something in her had already started writing the first line of a different story. The black moleskin had been sitting on her shelf for months, too clean to use, too sharp-edged for grocery lists or reminders. But tonight, June opened it without hesitation. She sat alone at the kitchen table, the overhead light buzzing faintly above her. The house was still. Danny was gone for the weekend, and Haley hadn't returned. The silence felt earned. Across the top of the page, she wrote in steady block letters, Haley, contributions versus costs. She stared at it, then underlined it, hard enough to leave an imprint on the next page. She didn't know exactly where to begin, so she started with what she remembered most clearly. Childcare, 3 hours after school. Sometimes more, every weekday. That was 15 hours a week. Multiply that by 4 weeks, then by 22 months. She didn't do the final math, just wrote hundreds of hours, no pay, no thanks. Groceries, milk, eggs, juice, yogurt, snacks, paper towels, detergent. June listed each item individually, then added half the fridge, half the pantry, all my money, housework, dishes, trash, vacuuming, bathrooms, Danny's laundry, Haley's hairbrush left in the sink. Would you mind? I'll get it next time. June filled half a page with the words she'd said yes to, and the silence that followed. School tasks, forms, parent portal updates, field trip envelopes, forgotten lunch boxes, cupcakes baked for a classroom party she hadn't even been told about until the night before. Emotional labor, excusing Haley's tantrums, softening her sarcasm, filling in the awkward silences she left behind. She's just tired. She's going through a lot. She flipped to a clean page and numbered each item. It wasn't until she hit 73 that she stopped. Not because she'd run out, but because she'd seen enough. The list wasn't a journal. It was a record, and somewhere deep inside, it felt like an invoice. The front door creaked. June looked up. Shirley stepped in, holding a takeout bag in one hand, her phone in the other. Didn't think you'd cooked, she said, setting it on the counter. Brought enough. June gave a small nod. Thanks. Shirley noticed the open notebook. She didn't ask, but her eyes lingered. June tapped the pen against the margin. I'm just making sense of things. Reckoning's a kind of math, Shirley said, unpacking cartons. Takes a while, but once you have the totals, it gets hard to ignore. They ate without much talk. Stir-fried noodles, warm and spicy. June barely tasted them. Shirley glanced again at the pages. Time is value, she said finally. You gave both. June didn't respond right away. She just opened to the final page of the notebook and wrote in neat centered print. Inheritance owed? She underlined it twice. Neither of them said anything more. The weight between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was acknowledgement. Proof that someone else had seen it too. After dinner, Shirley left with a nod and a glance that said more than a speech would have. June rinsed the containers, wiped the counter, and sat back down. The list stared up at her, unflinching, quiet, undeniable. She picked up her phone, scrolled through contacts she hadn't looked at in years. Then her finger stopped. Marcus Hollowell. She hesitated only long enough to feel the nerves and choose not to obey them. She tapped. It rang once, twice. Marcus. The voice was the same, even, direct, not warm, but not cold either. June didn't wait. I'm ready to make some changes. There was a pause on his end, long enough for memory to flood in. Brief images of meetings, of warnings she hadn't taken seriously. Then, tell me when. She glanced back at the notebook, at the words she'd underlined with such quiet finality. Her voice was calm. Soon. June stood at the sink, watching coffee fill the pot in slow, steaming arcs. The light through the kitchen blinds hit the notebook where she'd left it open on the table. The words she'd written the night before hadn't faded. If anything, they felt louder now. Her phone buzzed once on the counter, then again, same number. Caleb. She let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. Just a date and time. Sunday, 4 p.m. Followed by, Haley says you're still invited. She's trying. June poured the coffee, added nothing to it, and sat at the table. She stared at the message, the cup warming her fingers. Then she opened a blank text, typed out 5 words, and sent them without rereading. I won't be attending. June. No explanation. No soft landing. The call came in an hour later. Caleb's name filled the screen. June let it ring twice, then answered with the same silence she'd used to endure his monologues. You know she's upset, he said immediately. Haley's not perfect, but this is petty. June stared out the window. The neighbor's kid rode a scooter down the sidewalk, back and forth, carving half circles like it was the only thing that mattered. You really can't just let things go? Caleb asked. She's your niece, June spoke quietly. I'm done cleaning what people keep dirtying, he exhaled, like she'd slapped him. She made mistakes. You act like she's some monster. No, June said. She acts like she's the victim, and you all let her. She hung up before he could answer. By noon, Shirley was at her door with a battered yellow folder in one hand and a plastic container of chili in the other. This is yours, she said, handing over the folder. What is it? Your past, Shirley said. Figured you might want to remember who you were before she made you forget. Inside were a stack of old pay stubs, custodial work from 15 years ago, 2 jobs, weekends and overnights. June flipped through them like fossils. $8.75 an hour, $9.10, $9.75. Back when she and Shirley had cleaned schools no one respected, polished floors for people who never said thank you. Hard work, real work. I kept mine too, Shirley said. People like Haley don't know what it takes to keep things clean. They think it's magic. Or free. June looked up. Her eyes didn't tear, but something inside her shifted, clicked. Thank you, she said. And meant it. That night, June sat with the legal pad and wrote the first draft of her new will. The words came easy. She wrote Haley's name once, then crossed it out. Below that, in all caps, Haley Wren, excluded. No assets, no funds, no claim. The sentence sat cold and clean on the page. She didn't reread it. Just flipped to a new sheet and began again. 2 days later, she met Marcus at a quiet office suite off of Harlan Street. The walls were lined with matte gray acoustic panels, the windows half-tinted. It felt removed from time. Marcus looked exactly the same, neat, calm, unreadable, a man built for clean exits. She doesn't know you're revising the will, he asked. She will. He tapped a pen against the side of his tablet. And Danny? June didn't hesitate. I want her protected, but not controlled. Marcus nodded. You'll want to firewall it. An education trust, irrevocable, private. She gets access for school, not for lifestyle. That way, Haley can't touch a cent, she'll fight it. She'll lose, Marcus said, if we do it right. June nodded slowly, then looked down at the paperwork between them. Contracts, disclosures, estate language too dense to breathe in. But she didn't flinch. She picked up the pen. Before she signed, she said one thing, almost to herself. No more free labor. Not even in death she signed clean, steady strokes. Marcus collected the papers in silence. Outside, her phone buzzed. Another text from Haley. June didn't open it. June was rinsing dishes when the alert buzzed across her phone. Not a call, not a text. It was a tag. She dried her hands and opened the app. Haley's post sat at the top of her feed, bright with filtered colors and forced cheer. A carousel. Danny's artwork, a selfie of Haley holding a wine glass. And then the third photo, a blurry shot of the laundry room. June's back, hunched slightly, folding a towel, captioned, "Some people help because they care. Others just never left the service industry," a laughing emoji, a wine glass emoji, 2 hashtags, then silence. June blinked once, then again. It wasn't the photo, it was the precision of it, the timing, the caption. Not an accident, not a joke between friends. This was performance. Cruelty in daylight. 83 likes, including Caleb's. Joan's thumb hovered. She didn't like, didn't comment. She simply took a screenshot, then another, capturing the likes, the timestamp, the hashtags. She opened the file folder labeled Estate and Trust Private and added a new subfolder, Public Disrespect, inside it. She saved the images and renamed the first file, tone_evidence_001. She forwarded the images to Marcus without comment. 10 minutes later, he called. "Good," he said. "We'll need tone evidence. That post, it's proof of intent. Makes your case stronger if things get messy." June didn't ask what messy meant. She already knew. By afternoon, Shirley was at her door again, this time with a lemon tart wrapped in wax paper and a deadpan expression. "You saw it?" Shirley asked. June nodded. Shirley didn't ask how she felt. She just leaned against the counter, arms folded. It wasn't just mean. It was strategic. "I know." "People like her don't destroy," Shirley said. "They erode. Slow, quiet. Pretty words in public. Rot in private." June said nothing, but her jaw was tight. She'd always carried things instead of confronting them. Now she was cataloging them instead. A kind of forensic grief. Shirley peeled back the wax paper and slid the tart toward her. "We're not just cutting her out," she said. "We're disinfecting." June made the appointment that evening. An estate restructure. Full sweep. Irrevocable changes. She used Marcus's office portal and requested in-person, not phone, not Zoom, paper signatures, permanent records. After she hit submit, she opened her notebook. The original list still lived on the earlier pages. 73 tasks. Invisible debts tallied in her own handwriting. She flipped to a blank page and wrote, "New will, aftermath protocols." Below that, Haley's claims expected. Disrespect pattern documented. Emotional exploitation witnessed. Online smear attempt archived. Witnesses, Shirley, Marcus, Caleb's public like. She drew a thin line beneath the last one and added, "This is not revenge. It's removal." The next morning, her phone lit up with a new message. "Caleb, can we talk?" She didn't answer. She read it twice, then let the screen dim on its own. She pictured his hand hovering over his phone, thumbs nervous, tone prepped. He probably practiced it in his head, some plea for balance or understanding, or maybe that favorite fallback of the week. She didn't mean it. June slid the phone across the table and left it there. Whatever Caleb had to say, he'd had years to say it. He didn't deserve her attention now. Not anymore. The pen was heavier than she expected. Black lacquer, brass tip. Cold in her fingers. June sat in Marcus's office, every document aligned neatly in front of her, color-coded tabs marking where to sign, date, initial. The overhead lights were dimmer than standard fluorescence, giving the room a muted tone, like this wasn't just legal business, but something ceremonial. Marcus pushed the first packet forward. "Irrevocable trust," he said. "All primary assets will move under this structure as soon as signatures are verified and received by our financial custodians." June didn't ask for another explanation. She picked up the pen and signed her name. Neat, decisive, unflinching. The sound of ink on paper was quiet, but final. Next, the property transfer. Marcus flipped to the highlighted page. "This formally moves the house title under the trust. It can't be contested." Not even posthumously, June signed again. Her hand didn't shake. Then came the financial authorizations. Checking, savings, Roth IRA, retirement account, one modest brokerage. She initialed each line where accounts were retitled. No longer hers, not in the personal sense. Now belonging to something built for control, for protection, for silence. "For Danny," Marcus said, sliding over the next form. "This creates a sealed education fund. It can only be accessed for accredited school expenses. No exceptions, no discretionary requests. It bypasses Haley entirely. Will Danny know?" June asked. "When she's ready." And not before June signed. Again. Marcus straightened the next document and tapped the page lightly with 2 fingers. "This clause restricts Haley from inheriting or benefiting, directly or indirectly. It's notarized, filed in duplicate, and will trigger immediate rejection if she attempts to contest." "Good," June said. His tone didn't change, but his posture did. More careful now. "This also disqualifies Caleb unless Haley predeceases you. Even then, only partial eligibility. No override clauses. June didn't look up. Make it absolute. It is. She signed the page, dotted the date. That was the last document. Marcus gathered the stacks and organized them into 2 piles, one to be couriered to the courthouse, the other to be overnighted to the financial institutions. No delays, no loose ends. He pulled out a red folder, placed everything inside, and snapped the clasp shut. "Congratulations," he said. "It's done." June sat back. Her fingers were ink-stained, her wrists slightly sore, but she felt lighter than she had in years. Not proud, not angry, just clean. She stepped out into the parking lot alone. The sky above was pale and cloudless. Early fall light, crisp, dry. A different kind of quiet than she was used to. She unlocked her car but didn't get in. Just stood there, hand on the door handle, looking out at the street. Across the lot, a family was leaving a dentist's office. Mother, father, kid with a balloon. The normalcy of it felt far away. Not unreachable, just irrelevant. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. Filed. Confirmed. Irrevocable. Welcome to the future tense. She allowed herself a breath of satisfaction. Then she opened her photos, navigated to the screenshot folder. The post, the caption, the likes. Caleb's name. Still there, still visible. A digital thumbprint Haley couldn't scrub away. June tapped share and attached it to her digital estate log under the section titled Context of Exclusion, Supplemental Evidence. She wasn't building a case for court. She was building a memory she could reread later if anyone dared ask why. That night, Shirley knocked once before letting herself in. "Lemon tart again?" June asked. "Nope." Shirley held up a bottle of chilled sparkling water. "You disinfected. Time to hydrate." They sat on the back porch, no porch light, only the moon above. June told her everything, not out of drama, but for record. Shirley listened with the patience of someone who had lived enough to know what silence costs. When June finished, Shirley raised her glass. "To freedom from unpaid debts," she said. June clinked hers against it. "To clean exits." But when she checked her email before bed, there was a subject line waiting. "Regarding Danny, let's talk." Haley. She didn't open it, not yet. The knock came at 5:14 p.m. June didn't move right away. She stood at the kitchen sink, hands resting on the counter, watching the light shift on the floor as the sun dropped behind the trees. The knock came again, slightly louder this time, but not impatient, polite, polished. She already knew, no text, no call, just a pop-in wrapped in, manufactured sincerity. That was Haley's signature move. Surface-level kindness with a serrated edge hidden just beneath. June dried her hands and opened the door. Haley stood on the porch holding a white bakery box and wearing a soft expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her hair was curled, lip gloss on, performative, like she was going somewhere she expected cameras. "I thought we could talk," Haley said, as if the words themselves were generous. "I brought cherry scones." From that place you like June said nothing. She stepped aside without a word, letting her in. Not because she wanted to, but because she needed to see it, whatever it was Haley had come to sell. One last performance. Haley stepped into the kitchen like it had changed since she left it, like she was entering someone else's house. She looked around, then placed the box carefully on the counter. She stayed standing. June, Saturday. The silence stretched. Haley cleared her throat. "Look, I think there's been a little misunderstanding. That post, God, we were just joking. It wasn't even about you. I mean, Danny took that photo forever ago." We thought it was funny June didn't respond. She watched her carefully, like studying a machine for signs of malfunction. Haley shifted. "It was just a stupid caption. Nobody meant anything by it. Still nothing." Haley's smile thinned. "You know, it's weird not hearing you say anything. You've never been the cold type." From the hallway came another voice. Shirley. She walked in holding her phone like it was evidence. No hello, no performance. Just presence. She held up the screen, hit play. A voicemail crackled through the speaker. Haley's voice, unmistakably hers. If she wasn't around to mop and babysit, I don't know what else she'd be good for. She's just there. Like some houseplant with a laundry fetish. Beep. Silence. Haley's face blanched. That was out of context, she said quickly, too quickly. I was venting. I didn't know I'd even left that. Where did you get that? You butt-dialed me, Shirley said calmly, 2 weeks ago. I saved it. Haley turned to June, her eyes now sharp, searching for sympathy. You're seriously going to sit there and let this play out like a courtroom drama? After everything I've done for you? June stood, slowly, calmly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You wanted a maid, she said. Hire one. The words dropped like stone in water. No splash, just wait. Haley blinked. For a moment, she looked young, unmasked, but only for a moment. Wow, she said. So this is what I get. After I included you in everything, let you live here, let you be part of our life. Let me, June said, eyes narrowing. I paid rent. I bought groceries. I raised your daughter when you couldn't be bothered to close your laptop. Haley's mouth opened, closed. She glanced at Shirley as if looking for backup. Shirley raised an eyebrow. Keep going. We're listening. The bakery box sat untouched on the counter. Haley's voice rose. You think this makes you better than me? All your little spreadsheets and folders and passive-aggressive to-do lists? You think people are going to applaud you for cutting off your family? June didn't flinch. I don't need applause. I need peace. That did it. Haley grabbed the bakery box, twisting the top shut. Fine, she snapped. You want silence? You've got it. But don't expect Danny to understand why her aunt suddenly disappeared from her life. Don't expect me to explain this mess you've made. You don't have to, June said. She'll know. Haley stared at her for half a second longer, eyes hard, mouth trembling, then stormed out. The door slammed behind her. June turned back to the table and sat down, steady. Shirley stood beside her, silent. After a while, June said, She's not done. No, Shirley said, but she's exposed. June opened her notebook, flipped past lists and legal notes, and added a single new page. At the top, she wrote, Visit, unwanted, exit, permanent. Then she closed the cover, and for the first time in days, she smiled. Marcus arrived in a gray suit and colder mood. No briefcase, just a secure document satchel and a sealed envelope he never let out of his hand. June met him on the porch with a mug of black coffee and the kind of nod that meant everything had already been decided. Inside, he laid out the materials on the table like blueprints for a controlled demolition. This is the capacity packet, he said. Cognitive, functional, and decision-making. Signed, notarized, backed by 2 evaluations. You pass all of them with a clarity score that would make a probate judge blush. June opened the envelope. Dozens of pages, charts, notes, credentials, all filed under her name. No one was going to say she wasn't of sound mind. Not now, not later. Next, Marcus continued, is the 5-year documentation folder. Medical autonomy, tax filings, property management, employment history, independent living records. Every one of them contradicts Haley's narrative. He tapped the corner of the folder like punctuation. June took a breath, but it wasn't nerves. It was release. I made all my own choices, she said. Marcus nodded. Now it's time the court sees that in black and white. The motion Haley filed was predictable and sloppy. A claim of undue influence, filed 2 days after the confrontation. She alleged that June had been manipulated, pressured into rewriting her will by outsiders who had something to gain. It was filled with soft language, meant to stir emotion, confusion, fatigue, susceptibility, regret. What Haley didn't know was that June had spent years building a trail of clarity. By noon, Shirley had typed her affidavit on her home desktop, printed it on linen paper, and walked it over in a manila envelope. I dated it back to the first time she showed me the notebook, she said. Not that you'll need it, but it helps. June read it that afternoon. Simple, clear, powerful. June Wren has acted with long-term intent and full understanding. I have witnessed her reasoning firsthand, over months, not moments. She is no victim. She is no fool. She is a woman cleaning her house. That last sentence sat like a nail in polished wood. It didn't even make it to court. The judge reviewed the packet Marcus submitted, skimmed the affidavits, looked at the documented trust structures, and tossed Haley's claim with a quiet sigh and a single sentence. You don't get to call someone unstable just because they stop serving you. Caleb called later that evening. June answered this time, not out of curiosity, but closure. He didn't start with hello. You really filed all that? He asked, like it wasn't already public record. I did. There was a pause. Then, why are you doing this? His voice was soft, like he couldn't decide if he was hurt or embarrassed. Probably both. June took her time before answering. She walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the yard, where the leaves were starting to crisp around the edges. Because I should have done it years ago. The silence on the other end felt like it was trying to rearrange itself into understanding, but couldn't quite get there. Danny's still your family, Caleb said eventually, but without fight. She always will be, June said, and she'll be protected. That's already done. She didn't wait for more. She ended the call cleanly. No anger, just finish. That night, Shirley came over with a fire pit kit in her trunk. They set it up in the backyard under a clean September sky. No ceremony, just flame. June brought out a shoebox filled with older papers, grocery lists from years past, old texts printed out and highlighted, scraps of unspoken resentment she'd once kept like warnings. One by one, she fed them into the fire. They curled black, then vanished. When the box was empty, Shirley passed her a sparkly water and leaned back in her chair. You think they'll try again? She asked. June looked at the fire. They never had influence. They just had access. And now, they had neither. June didn't expect the HOA board to care. But she submitted the paperwork anyway. Employment history, volunteer hours logged at community cleanups, proof of residence dating back 14 years, all organized, labeled, and stapled into tidy packets. She walked it down to the clubhouse herself. No fanfare, just delivery. They're hosting elections soon, Shirley had said, flipping through the bylaws like she'd written them, and people like a known quantity, especially one who's already done the work. June had shrugged. I don't want the position. That's why you'd be good at it, Shirley replied. No one trusts the ones begging for a microphone. The packet wasn't about the HOA. Not really. It was about the record. A version of her life she could submit on her own terms, for once. A week later, the retired custodians of Northern Colorado featured her in their quarterly newsletter. A full column. Shirley had tipped them off. She'd called it a quiet corrective. The piece wasn't flashy, just a black and white photo of June from her last year on staff at the elementary school. Mop bucket in hand, graying braid down her back. The headline read, Still standing, June Wren's work wasn't invisible, just ignored. They listed her years of service, noted her spotless employment record, and quoted a line from an old student evaluation card. Miss June makes things better. That part made her stop reading. She folded the newsletter and set it in her keepsake drawer next to Shirley's affidavit, the notarized trust, and the only letter Danny had ever written her. A crayon drawing of a sun and a crooked heart with the word, "You're my safe place." She didn't cry, but something in her exhaled. Haley went quiet. No more texts, no more drive-by guilt visits, no more captions laced with barbs. It wasn't repentance, it was retreat. Whatever public version of June she'd hoped to control, quiet, loyal, pliable, had collapsed. And with it, Haley's favorite narrative, that June was lucky to be in their orbit, not the other way around. She wanted the story shaped, June told Shirley over coffee on the porch. I wrote my own. Shirley toasted her with a biscotti. And you edited the hell out of hers. They both laughed. Not loudly, but freely. That night, the message came in. It was short, from Donnie. Why is Mom mad at you? Did I do something? June stared at the text for a long time. The words had no punctuation, no emojis, just clean, anxious honesty from a 10-year-old trying to understand adult fallout. She considered waiting, but she couldn't. Not for this. She picked up her phone and typed slowly, carefully. You didn't do anything wrong. Adults make mistakes. Some of us try to fix them. That can make other people angry. She paused, deleted it, started over. Danny, I love you. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups fight because one of them doesn't feel seen. I tried to stay quiet for a long time, but staying quiet made things worse. Send. A minute passed. Then another. No reply. She set the phone down, walked into the kitchen, made a cup of tea. When she returned, the screen was still blank. But that didn't mean the message hadn't landed. Out front, the street was silent except for wind through dry trees. A few houses had their porch lights on. Autumn was settling in with its soft, early dark. She sat on the steps with the tea in her hands and thought of every room she'd ever cleaned in silence. Every time she'd swallowed back truth so someone else could feel comfortable. That era had ended quietly, but it had ended. She opened her notebook, found the page she'd titled Legacy Draft, and added a new line beneath the others. Tell the truth, especially when they ask. She underlined it once, then again. The knock wasn't loud. It was too polite for that. 2 soft taps, spaced apart like punctuation, one at the beginning, one at the end. June didn't answer right away. She was at the dining room table, reviewing Marcus's final summary packet. A clean one-pager that itemized the trust, its legal firewall, and the beneficiaries listed in unbreakable ink. Only one name appeared, and it wasn't Caleb's. She took her time closing the folder. Then she opened the door. Caleb stood there wearing the same khakis he always wore when he wanted to seem reasonable. He held a manila envelope. His expression was forced to neutral, but the tightness in his jaw told the truth first. "Can I come in?" he asked. June stepped aside without a word. He walked into the kitchen, scanned it like he was trying to gauge whether anything had changed. Then he set the envelope on the counter, but didn't open it. "We thought we were part of the plan," he said finally, voice measured. "You know, not front and center, but considered." June said nothing. He glanced toward the dining room, where the estate folder still sat closed. "I mean, Haley. Okay, she messed up. We've talked about that, but you and I—" "No," June said softly. "We've never talked. You've explained." I've endured Caleb's mouth open slightly. He wasn't used to that version of her voice. Flat, unbothered, final. He reached for the envelope he'd brought, but June stopped him with a glance. "I know what's in there," she said. "Some proposal. A compromise. Maybe even a legal question dressed up like family concern." Caleb exhaled, the tone shifting fast. "So this is revenge?" June folded her arms, not defensive, just containing herself. "No," she said. "This is accuracy." She walked to the dining table, picked up a second folder, slimmer, unlabeled, and handed it to him. He opened it. Inside were 4 pages, a cover letter, 3 columns on a spreadsheet. No emotion, just facts. Line by line, it listed dates and amounts of groceries purchased, instances of childcare, transportation, and emergency pickups, bills covered, utilities forwarded, errands done as a favor. The final tab had a title, Projected Inheritance Impact, 0 allocation. Below that, Rationale, lifetime contribution outweighs future claim. Caleb blinked hard. "You kept records." "You kept expectations," June replied. "I just made them visible." He sat down without asking. You know this'll ruin us, right? June pulled out a chair across from him, but didn't sit. She stood, calm and still. No, she said. You already did that. You just didn't notice he shook his head slowly, like he could rewind the moment. It was never about the money. It was about position, she finished. You wanted a guaranteed seat at a table you never set, for a meal you never helped prepare. His eyes met hers then, angry, confused, wounded. All things that arrived late and uninvited. Danny will feel this, he said, like it was a warning. June softened, just slightly. She already does. And that's the only part that matters to me. He closed the folder too quickly, too sharply, like the paper had burned him. You're going to die alone if you keep cutting everyone out. June didn't flinch. I'm not cutting. I'm clarifying. He stood, eyes narrowed now. Well, congratulations. You got your control back. She walked him to the door, her tone still even. I didn't get it back. I reclaimed it. There's a difference. Caleb stepped onto the porch but turned once more. Don't expect anyone to show up at the end. June smiled then. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't smug, it was clean. I'm not expecting anything, she said. That's why I'm finally at peace. She shut the door before he could say another word. Later that night, she filed his folder into the cabinet beneath the rest. Caleb Wren, closed loop. She paused before shutting the drawer, then added a sticky note on the front of the file. No return mail. Outside, the wind had picked up. The leaves along the back fence had started falling in steady waves. Autumn, fully here now, wasn't asking for permission. June turned off the lights and walked out to the porch. Shirley was already there, 2 cups of tea in a hand. How'd it go? She asked. June Saturday. Took the cup, sipped. He thought he was owed something, she said. I told him the only thing he'd ever inherited was my silence. And I took that back. Shirley nodded, slow and proud. You're dangerous when you're this quiet, she said. June looked up at the sky, clear and open. I know. The post was cleaner this time. No tags, no names. Just the same tone, passive-aggressive, polished, and aimed squarely at anyone watching closely enough to connect the dots. Some people confuse bitterness with boundaries. Maybe that's why they always die alone, followed by a moody black and white photo of a rose with scattered petals and the hashtag number sign, cycles end themselves. June read it once. Then again. She didn't comment. She didn't screenshot it either, not this time. She forwarded the link to Marcus with a 1-line email. I think we're there. Marcus called less than an hour later. Drafted a cease and desist, he said. Defamation with malicious intent. The context is clear, especially given the estate history. We can send it certified, or I can escalate directly. Send it, June said. Let's keep the escalation in her hands. He paused. And if she ignores it, then we file. Marcus didn't ask if she was sure. He knew. By afternoon, Haley had the letter, delivered via e-sign and certified mail. Legally worded, cold in tone, structured in 3 parts, defamation via implication and pattern. Public attempts to undermine credibility and legacy, consequences, civil litigation for damages, and breach of peace. June kept the receipt in her cabinet, filed under a new tab, post-trust compliance threats. The next morning, Marcus called again. She won't respond, but she'll read every word. She wanted attention, June said. She got documentation. Marcus cleared his throat. And Danny's trust has finalized. 2 sets of authentication on file. No access from guardians. No asset bleeding. Every route sealed. June pulled up the file on her laptop. Scanned the final line. Guardian override. Denied by original benefactor. She signed it digitally, then physically, then locked the paper copy in her drawer. She didn't smile, but she felt something close. 2 days later, she visited the estate office. It was time to finish what she'd started. She updated her funeral directive. Full clause restrictions. No family speeches. No podium access. No memory contributions from people who never asked about hers when she was living. She signed the last page and added a handwritten note below the signature. Let silence finish what they tried to narrate. The clerk looked up. You want this filed now? June nodded once. Effective immediately. That evening, Shirley came by with a paper bag from the bakery and a bottle of lemonade. Haley hasn't posted in 36 hours, she said, sitting down at the kitchen table. Either she's regrouping or choking. Both, June said. Sometimes silence is just someone refilling their poison. Shirley smirked and passed over a lemon tart. Cut her off at every podium, she said. Now she can't perform grief either. They clinked forks. The next morning, Caleb showed up again. No envelope, just irritation and a face full of fragile righteousness. June saw him through the window, took her time walking to the door. She didn't invite him in. You really filed a legal threat? He asked. To your own niece. She filed slander in lowercase, June said. I responded in uppercase. He frowned. This isn't how family works. It's how protection works. Caleb exhaled hard. You're hurting all of us. No, June said. You just haven't gotten away with it this time. He stepped back like she'd shoved him. We've never taken anything from you. You took credit, she said. You took convenience. You took peace. And now you're angry? June shook her head. No, I'm free. He didn't have a response, just clenched his jaw, turned, and walked down the steps slower than he'd arrived, like gravity had tripled. Later that night, June added a new page to the notebook. She titled it, Jokes They Choked On. Beneath it, she wrote, Turns out the punchline was legal. She underlined it twice, then closed the book. She made tea and sat on the back steps. The sun was low. The light came in soft. No wind, just the quiet sound of leaves falling like slow applause. Shirley came out a moment later and sat beside her, a blanket over her shoulders and a calm in her face that only comes from watching someone take their life back one line at a time. They'll talk, Shirley said. They'll spin it. Let them, June said. They're running out of air. The envelope was thick stock cream, sealed with a pressed gold sticker and too much care. It had been left wedged between the screen door and the frame, polite but invasive, the kind of gesture that pretends to be gentle but presses like a thumb against a bruise. June peeled it open with a letter opener. No rush. Inside, an invitation. Family dinner. This Saturday, 6 p.m. at the house, for healing, for legacy, for us. Below the centered text, Haley had scrawled a note in cursive too neat to be spontaneous. We can still come back from this. Let's show Danny how grown-ups fix things. June read it twice, then laid the card flat on her desk. A performance. She didn't even need to ask who else had received one. Caleb, of course. Maybe Haley's therapist, probably her online followers, indirectly. June opened her top drawer, removed a single sheet of thick ivory stationery, no frills, just weight, and wrote, I respectfully decline this invitation, and any future gatherings rooted in optics rather than change. She signed it, folded it once, and slid it into a white envelope along with a notarized copy of her boundary declaration. The legal clause stating she'd opted out of all estate-related gatherings, communications, and revision attempts by the individuals previously listed as non-beneficiaries. At the bottom, in her own handwriting, this is not war. This is withdrawal. She hand-delivered it to Marcus's office the next day. He didn't ask questions, just glanced at the envelope and said, Notarized? Yesterday afternoon, June replied. Marcus nodded once. Then it's enforceable. He reached for a red folder on his desk and tapped the cover before sliding it toward her. These are your finalized secondary executor documents, he said. Copies have been filed and logged. You'll want to store them separate from your primary will, just in case. Just in case they try to reframe the ending, June asked. Exactly. She opened the folder. Inside were two names, both trusted. One was a retired librarian who handled community assets with steel-backed care. The other was Shirley. Both had agreed. Both had signed. No ambiguity, Marcus said. If anyone tries to rewrite the script, your understudies know the exact dialogue. Back home, June pulled out a clean composition book. Black cover, wide rule. Across the top of the first page, she wrote in slow, deliberate strokes. Legacy letter, Petibite arm. For Donnie, she paused for a long moment before writing the first sentence. You are not the cause of the choices people make around you. She let the ink dry before continuing. She wrote about how love sometimes gets distorted into obligation, and how boundaries aren't the opposite of affection, they're proof of it. She wrote about silence and what it costs, about caregiving and what it takes, about truth and how it deserves daylight even when it makes people uncomfortable. Then finally, you are loved, not because you stayed quiet, but because I finally didn't. She closed the book and wrapped it in a manila envelope marked, to be delivered when she turns 18. That night, Shirley brought over a flask of peppermint cocoa and a bag of lemon cookies. No text from Haley, she asked, almost amused. She's waiting, June said, for a headline. For an angle, they sat on the porch again, wrapped in their usual blankets, the air sharp with fall's new urgency. Shirley held up her cup like a toast. You're not just rejecting a dinner. You're making peace. With yourself, June smiled faintly. Then I'm finally full. Later the message came, just after 11 p.m. from Haley. No greeting, just, don't do this over a joke. June stared at the screen. For the first time in days, her hands curled tight around the phone. She opened her notes app and typed, this isn't over a joke. It's over a pattern. She copied it into a reply. Then added, you wanted to narrate my worth. I rewrote the script. There's nothing left to attend. She hit send. No dots appeared. No reply came. She didn't expect one. June got up, poured herself a glass of water, and walked to her bookshelf. From the top, she retrieved the notebook she'd once started in silence. Haley, contributions versus costs. She flipped past the original lists, past the trust breakdowns, past the folded letters and funeral clause copies. She opened to a blank page and wrote, dinner not served, appetite gone. She underlined it once, then again. Then, as if sealing it all, she wrote beneath, closure isn't an invitation. It's an action. And this time, she didn't close the notebook. She left it open on her desk as a message, to herself, to anyone who still thought she could be pulled back. The deadline passed quietly. No drama, no disruption. Just a clock striking 4 p.m. and the sound of nothing following. Marcus had warned her. If they're going to file a counter motion, it'll come last minute. That's how people like Haley work. Delay, then detonate. But at 4:01, nothing had detonated. And by 4:17, Marcus sent a one-line email. No filings, no extensions. They ran out of time. June stared at the words for a long moment before clicking back to her desktop. Then she opened a plain text document labeled Living Legacy, Active Draft. She scrolled to the bottom, past her directives, her trust notes, the funeral instructions, and the legacy letter for Danny. Under the line that read, Outstanding Threats, she typed, None. Then hit save. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like release. The next morning, she walked 2 blocks to the small independent paper downtown and asked to place an obituary in their life notices section. Not urgent, she said, but final. The receptionist handed her a clipboard and a pen. June wrote slowly, not out of hesitation but out of precision. Her mind already knew the language. Her hand simply had to catch up. She titled it, June Wren, still here, but planning ahead. The first few lines were standard. June Wren, longtime resident of the Oakbridge neighborhood, retired custodian and community volunteer. Then she paused and changed the paragraph that had always been the hardest to write. She crossed out the line, survived by her niece, Haley, and brother-in-law, Caleb. She replaced it with, survived by those who showed up with care. Not just when it was convenient, but when it was real. She handed the form back and said, "No print date yet. Just keep it on file," the woman nodded. "We can do that." Later that afternoon, Marcus confirmed via secure portal, the trust is fully active. All routes sealed. No access from previously excluded parties. She clicked on the official summary. 2 sections were highlighted. Guardian override, denied by benefactor authority posthumous contact access, disabled. It was legal, sterile, and perfect. She printed it, placed it in the back of her personal file, and wrote on the tab in red ink, "Peace, protected." At 3:12 p.m., Danny came by after school, her backpack half-zipped and dragging behind her like a loyal shadow. She dropped her sketch pad on the table without saying a word and began drawing with deliberate focus. Circles, swirls, a soft-lined house with big windows. "I drew this in art," she said. "It's supposed to be where you feel safe." She held it up. The house didn't look like Haley's. It didn't even look like June's, really. But there were lemon trees in the yard and a small notebook on the front porch railing. June smiled. Danny looked at her. "I'm glad I still get to see you." June reached across the table, brushing a piece of hair out of her face. "Me too, sweetheart." Danny asked nothing else. She didn't push or pry, she just kept drawing, because children don't need full explanations to know when someone has chosen them. That night, Shirley arrived with champagne chilled in a grocery bag and 2 lemon tarts in a white box. "No text from Haley," she said, handing June a mug. She ran out of ways to say nothing, June replied. They toasted with mismatched ceramic coffee cups, sat on the back patio in silence, and let the night settle in like a soft ending that had always been waiting for its cue. After a while, Shirley said, "You think it's over?" June leaned back in her chair. "No, but I think I'm out of range," Shirley grinned. "That's close enough to peace for me." Later that night, alone again, June went into her study. She pulled out the same notebook she'd started months ago, once filled with itemized hurt, quiet fury, and 1,000 invisible debts. She flipped to the last blank page. At the top, she wrote, "The clock she ran out of then, beneath it. The filings never came. The apology never arrived. The performance never worked. And still, here I am." She sat with it for a long while, then added one last line, centered on the page. "Some stories aren't closed with forgiveness. They're closed with facts." She capped the pen, closed the notebook, and slid it back into her drawer. Not hidden, not locked, just put away. Outside, the wind had picked up again. Leaves rustled across the sidewalk. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a wind chime struck a slow, steady rhythm. Time hadn't stopped. It had simply moved on, without needing anyone's permission. And finally, so had she. The card came in a red envelope, sealed with a sticker that read, "Thinking of you." The handwriting on the front was familiar, rounded loops, slightly forced. Haley had always written like someone trying to be believed. It arrived 2 days after the deadline had passed. June found it tucked between 2 pieces of real mail, a water bill and a reminder from the dentist. She stood by the mailbox, flipping the envelope once in her hand. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She shrugged, walked back inside, and dropped it into the small wooden box by the front door marked "Unnecessary." Then she washed her hands. At her desk, the legacy folder sat open, pages neatly clipped into place. Financial trust documents, healthcare directive, final will, Danny's letter, all of it signed, all of it authenticated, all of it duplicated. She pulled out the backup drive, slid the cord into the port, and waited while the screen blinked through her cloud backups. It took less than a minute to sync. When it finished, she clicked eject and placed the small drive into a second folder marked "In the event of erasure attempts." She locked it in her desk drawer with a clean key and no second thoughts. Later that morning, Marcus emailed confirmation. Title documents officially filed. property deed retitled under trust ownership. Home secure. June didn't reply. She opened her file cabinet, found the manila folder labeled Primary Asset, Oak Bridge, and clipped in a copy of the PDF. On the front, in block letters, she wrote, "Final ownership, not for sale, not for debate." Then she sealed the folder shut with clear tape and placed it at the very back of the drawer, behind even the estate exclusion documents. Buried, but safe. That afternoon, Shirley came by, arms full, a takeout container of roasted vegetables, 2 folding chairs for the yard, and a new kitchen towel printed with lemons. "Because this house is no longer metaphorical," she said, handing it over. They ate lunch on the back patio. June didn't say much, but Shirley didn't need her to. After they'd cleared the plates, June pulled out a fresh copy of her healthcare directive. The previous version still listed Caleb as her emergency contact. A choice made out of convenience, not trust. A relic of a time when she thought she had no one else to write in. She crossed his name out slowly, then rewrote the line, "Primary Emergency Proxy, Eileen Rothwell, RN, retired. Witness present, Shirley M. Dorsey." "I figured you wouldn't mind," June said, handing Shirley the witness line. Shirley grinned, signing without a blink. "I'm honored. And very nosy. So if anything happens to you, I'll be making all the nurses uncomfortable." June laughed. Short, real, rare. Good. She folded the directive in thirds, placed it in a pre-labeled envelope, and slid it into the folder marked Medical Autonomy, Absolute. That night, the calendar pinged. A soft chime from the corner of her screen. Not a loud notification, just a low, persistent glow in the shape of a balloon. June glanced at it, already knowing what it was. Today, Haley's birthday. She'd forgotten the date. That used to feel impossible. There'd been a time when she'd planned the cakes, organized the candles, wrapped the gifts, and found polite excuses for Haley's late arrivals to her own dinners. She stared at the reminder. No photo. Just a line of text blinking quietly like a question. She clicked edit, then hovered over repeat annually, then tapped delete event. A box popped up. Delete this event or all future events? June selected delete all future events. The screen cleared. Blank. Silent. Clean. She closed the calendar window and walked to the living room, where the lamp was already dimmed and the windows cracked to let in the cool evening. She sat with her tea, curled her legs beneath her, and listened to the neighborhood wind moving gently through trees that were starting to let go of their leaves without complaint. Shirley had once said that fall was for truth-tellers, the season that made no apology for what it shed. June understood it now. She returned to her study and opened the composition book. On the last page she wrote, "The heart I protected then, beneath it, not by closing it, but by choosing who could reach it." She paused, then added, "She didn't break it, she just lost access," then underlined, "Not all loss is tragedy. Some is protection." She flipped back to the front of the notebook, ran her hand across the first page where months ago she had written names, tallied favors, cataloged disrespect. She had written it all down so she wouldn't forget. Now she remembered it without needing the page, and that somehow felt like even more freedom. She closed the book, not as a final act, but as a beginning no one else would write for her. The envelope was pale blue, stamped with embossed lettering and a logo she recognized immediately. Home Care Trust Alliance, a nonprofit that funded respite care for underpaid caregivers across the state. She hadn't been expecting anything from them, not yet. She slit the seal with the edge of a butter knife and pulled out the single sheet folded with care. It was printed on thick letterhead, the words centered and framed with subtle flourishes. "Dear Ms. Wren, thank you for your generous contribution. This donation, made in honor of Haley Carter, will support continued training, rest, and relief for hands-on family caregivers who serve their households without credit, compensation, or recognition. Your tribute ensures their work is no longer invisible. Warmly, the HTA administrative team. June let the letter rest against her lap for a moment. The edges curled slightly in her fingers. She didn't smile right away. That came later, when she pictured the name Haley Carter, printed across a tax-deductible receipt, legally bound to something real, humble, and unglamorous. Something that couldn't be unsaid or unpublished. Something she would never reclaim. Later that afternoon, Shirley walked in holding a cold drink and a plastic-wrapped bundle from the corner bakery. June handed her the letter wordlessly. Shirley read it once, then dropped into the nearest chair, wheezing. "Oh my God," she said, tears welling at the corners of her eyes. "That is iconic." June allowed herself a quiet sip of tea before replying. "She called me a maid," she said, folding the letter back in thirds. "Now she sponsors them." Shirley laughed so hard she had to wipe her face with the bakery napkin. "It's poetry," she said. "No, it's divine justice with a tax receipt." June slipped the letter into the Legacy Miscellaneous folder, a thin, crisp tab that held only 3 other items: Danny's sun drawing, a photo of the school custodian staff from 1994, and Shirley's affidavit. The folder didn't need to be thick, just accurate. That evening, Marcus called with 2 quick updates. 1, he said, "Your donation letter went semi-viral. Someone at HTA posted a photo of it, with the identifying info blacked out, of course, and it's been reshared about 12,000 times. June blinked. "Why?" "Because people are tired," Marcus said. "And you wrote a sentence into the world that hit the bone." He paused, then added, "And 2, Caleb's gone quiet. No replies to my office, no filings, no calls." June nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "What about Haley?" Marcus took a breath. "Her public social profiles are gone. Deleted this morning. Archive wipes across all platforms. Her blog redirects to a site under maintenance page. June didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Some exits weren't announcements. They were disappearances. At 6:13 p.m., Danny texted. No emojis, no lead-in, just, "You always had more strength than they could handle." June sat still for a long moment, phone in hand. The sentence glowed softly in her palm, like something sacred. She typed, "Strength doesn't always roar, honey. Sometimes it just leaves." She hovered, then deleted it. Started again. "Thank you, Danny. That means more than you know. I'm here, always. Quiet or loud. Send." No dots appeared, no typing bubble, but she knew it had landed. Later that night, June and Shirley sat outside on the patio, with nothing but the wind and a low-humming solar lamp that cast gold over the table, like a kind of domestic candlelight. Shirley poured 2 glasses of the sparkling elderflower she'd been saving for emotional verdicts. June raised hers gently. "To real caregivers," she said. "To those who never needed a hashtag," Shirley replied. They drank. Back inside, June opened the notebook again. The black and white composition book was worn now, softened at the corners, but still clean, still intact. She turned to the page after "The Heart I Protected" and titled the next, the name she couldn't reclaim. Then wrote, "She built her image with noise. I reclaimed my peace with silence. And now her name lives where she never labored. On the walls of real work, on the backs of real hands." She paused, then added, "And she can't take it back." Underneath, in smaller writing, "Not everything that gets erased is a loss. Some names shrink when held to the light." She shut the book slowly, then left it open again, as she always did now, never closed in fear, only paused in peace. Outside, the wind moved through the trees again. Somewhere in the dark, a child's laugh echoed down the block. It wasn't haunting, it was human. And June smiled. ChatGPT can make mistake. The hallway was quiet, not heavy, not haunted, just still. June walked it slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of a picture frame as she passed. Danny's drawings lined the left-hand wall, bright crayon suns, stick figures with crooked smiles, a watercolor of a house that looked nothing like any of theirs, but felt like all of them. Some were taped, some had been properly framed over time. She hadn't arranged them by date, just by feel. The paper edges had curled slightly, the glass stayed clean. She paused in front of one labeled in purple marker. My safe place. There was a window, a lemon tree, a notebook. June smiled and kept walking. The phone rang once, then twice. She didn't freeze, didn't hesitate. She didn't even glance toward it. She let it ring. By the third tone, it stopped, just as it always had before. But this time, her pulse stayed steady. Her hands stayed still. No dread, no defense. Just a call she didn't answer and didn't need to. She stepped into the study. The desk sat in its usual order. No chaos, no apology. June opened the file drawer with the smoothness of muscle memory. The folders greeted her in sequence, a quiet lineup of autonomy and foresight, trust, funeral, letters, legacy. She didn't open them today. She didn't need to. But she did slide her finger across the label of the last one, a soft tap of acknowledgement, like checking the heartbeat of something she'd already healed. Behind her, a familiar voice called from the kitchen. You feel done? June turned, one eyebrow raised. Shirley stood leaning against the doorframe, sipping something from a ridiculous cup shaped like a pineapple. No warning, no knock, just like always. June thought for a moment, then answered quietly. No, she said. I feel clean. Shirley grinned. God, that's even better. Danny arrived in the early afternoon, the door swinging open before June even got to it. I knocked, Danny called from the hallway. No, you didn't, June called back, laughing. Okay, I meant to. Her backpack hit the floor in its usual spot. She pulled out a sketchbook and a little paper bag. I brought you a cookie, she said, holding it out. Don't eat it yet. It broke June, took it carefully. That makes it better. Danny flopped onto the couch and flipped her sketchbook open. The drawing she showed first was of two women sitting on a bench under a lemon tree. That's you, she said, pointing to the figure with the notebook. And that's Shirley. I made her look taller than she is. Shirley will love that, Danny smiled. But there was a nervous edge to it this time. Can I bring my friend next time, she asked. June looked up. Of course, she said. Always. The relief on Danny's face was immediate and honest, like something unknotted itself behind her eyes. I think she needs a safe place too, Danny said, quieter this time. June reached for her hand. Then she's already welcome. Later, after Danny had gone and Shirley had left with promises of bringing dinner next time whether you like it or not, June stood alone in the kitchen. The light slanted low through the window, painting the tile floor in long bands of gold. She looked down, not a smear, not a scuff, not a single thing out of place. It was spotless, not because she was cleaning anymore, but because she didn't let dirt stay. She walked to the fridge, pulled out a glass bottle of tonic, and poured it slowly into a tall cup. No ice, just the fizz rising like punctuation. She brought it to the table, sat down, and pulled her notebook from the top drawer, now frayed at the edges, worn soft from months of truth. She flipped to the final page. She didn't hesitate. She already knew the title. The Clean Break. Then she wrote, in her firm, exact handwriting, my daughter-in-law called me a free maid, so I cleaned her out of my estate. She underlined it once. Then, because it made her laugh, she underlined it again. A gust of wind moved outside, rustling the trees along the fence line. Somewhere, a dog barked twice, then stopped. She set the pen down, not because there was nothing left to write, but because what she had written was enough. Outside, the last light of day hit the back porch just right, lemon-filtered and soft. The kind of light that doesn't ask for attention but deserves it anyway. June stepped into it. She let it land on her arms, her face, her hands. They weren't trembling. They were steady. She leaned against the railing, eyes closed for a moment, just listening. And when she finally went back inside, the door closed behind her with a quiet click. Not a slam, not a lock, just the clean sound of something finished, with no mess left behind.